A professor of economics lecturing with inputs on the axes says man hours, and a committee of women visit him after the class and instruct him that no, man hours is not acceptable language to quantify the amount of labor that's being used. A class about civics that uses the movie It's a Wonderful Life to illustrate the principles being taught, the film has to be withdrawn because a committee of students visit the professor and instruct him that the black woman in that movie is portrayed in a degrading way. Students are reprimanded or criticized publicly by a university administrator because they organize a theme party organized around the 1950s, and they're told that, well, the 50s was a time of racism and such a party by students is offensive to others. A professor of law refers to one of his colleagues as, well, he may be black, he may look black, but he thinks white. These examples could be multiplied. The point here is not, of course, that the forces of restriction of thought and expression are carrying people off to dungeons somewhere. The point is that the social pressures and the consequences of engaging in certain kinds of discourse are very severe. Things that can't be talked about on campus today. Is homosexual acts immoral? Can we talk about the extent of differences, overt differences in academic performance between racial groups? Can we discuss whether or not certain affirmative action practices are effective policy for the university? In other words, there are real restrictions on the scope of debate that can take place. Examples that I just cited, many of them my own personal experience of people that I know directly, they come about because the academic institutions are influenced by the complaints of students in a way that create cost for people. As I say, no one's dragged away to a dungeon, but one's life is made very much unpleasant if committees of students visits, if deans are called upon, if demonstrations occur outside your office and so forth. As a consequence, it's simply not worth the candle. Indeed, it is, of course, the case that there have always been constraints. I'm certainly not one standing here to say I want to be free to make racist remarks in my classes. What I think is the case, though, is that the cult of sensitivity has evolved in such a way that particular substantive issues of vital importance to be discussed cannot be discussed because particular insular minorities are exercising power, real power, to curtail the discussion that their feelings not be heard. I don't think that helps anybody. I think courage is in good stead. I don't doubt that many of us have exhibited it by making the arguments that we've made. But there's something about this charge of racism or sexism. There's something insidious about it that undermines the legitimacy of the person against whom it's leveled, that is taken up by people in such a way as to cast people out of the community. Indeed, the sensitivity mongers ought to understand that the ostracism that attends being cast out of the community because one has been willing to countenance or raise certain questions is a very serious cost to impose on people. No, I'm not saying that we shouldn't express our views or that we shouldn't be willing to enforce them by associating with those whom we like or not associating with those whom we don't. But I am saying that the tolerance that seems to be the mainstay of many of the arguments on the left is not exhibited when people run afoul of certain sacred cows. The colleagues of professors hold them accountable for what they say in the classroom by the way in which their work is judged, for what they write in their research and so on.
But they're not the consumers in the classroom.
No, and I will concede that there's nothing wrong with students raising complaints. What I'm saying, though, is that the quality of argument is undermined. This is the proposition that I maintain. Maybe you can rebut it. The quality of argument is undermined. The range of considerations that are brought into debate are limited by the self-censorship that attends the strenuous and sometimes irrational response to certain kinds of positions.